Hello tankers, this is NK33 and I'm doing a video on the thing that everybody wants to know how to do, and that is how to win. No, I'm not going to give you some secret technique that'll allow you to curb stomp your enemies. I'm not good enough to know any of those myself, or I'd be using them. This is basically just how do you win the game, and there's two ways. You can destroy all of the enemy vehicles, or you can capture the base. Now each one has its own problems and advantages, but destroying all of the enemy tanks is the obvious tactic, but base capture takes a bit of doing. Each tank that is in the capture circle in standard battles generates one capture point a second, as it says right here. And you can't generate more than 3 capture points a second, which means that having one tank in the cap circle generates or begins the capture, but having more than 3 doesn't give you any advantages. Now there are two other modes. That was for standard. Assault mode, there is one capture circle, one base, and you get the same 1 capture point per second and no more than 3 capture points per second for 3 tanks. Encounter battle is a little different. The difference is that you only generate 1 capture point every 2.5 seconds. You can still have 3 tanks in the cap generating 1 capture point every 2.5 seconds, but you don't get any bonus for anything more than having 3 tanks in the capture circle. Again, none of these, standard, assault, or encounter, give you any bonus for having more tanks in the capture circle. You don't generate capture points any faster. Now the real question that often comes up is, do you cap to win or do you kill everyone to win? Now the two arguments are, if you capture, you get points for every base capture point and every base defense point, but there's also what's called the team performance factor, a coefficient which increases your experience based on the total damage inflicted to the enemy team by your team, which means that there's a whole lot of people who think that you get some special bonus if you kill the entire enemy team. Well, you don't exactly. You get a bonus by how much damage that you inflict to the enemy team. And that's where the question of, do you capture or do you kill all? Well, you get a flat bonus for completing a base capture, and there is a credit bonus, a flat amount paid to everyone who is in the capture circle at the moment of completed base capture, independent of individual contribution. So you do get some, this column is for credits. You do get some credits for sitting in the cap circle when somebody else has captured it, but you don't get necessarily any points unless you participated in the capture, whereas the whole team gets the bonuses for damage done by everybody on the team. And I guess the real question that you have to ask yourself on whether you cap or whether you want to kill all is, how much total damage is there left on the enemy team? How much danger are you in of them capping out you? And most importantly, how much time do you want to spend, chasing down that last total damage versus, capping out and going on to your next tank? And the extremes of both positions are generally wrong. I mean, if at the beginning of the map you have 3 tanks go rushing over to the enemy cap circle, cap out, while barely any shots have been exchanged, that cheats everybody. If, however, you've got 1 tank with 2 hit points and you go racing around chasing after it and you never catch it, and the game ends in a draw, you've cheated yourself also. So you have to decide at what point is capping a good strategy and at what point is killing all the enemies, and they're not mutually exclusive. Remember, you only get cap points as long as you're in the cap circle. If you leave the cap circle before capture is completed, all capture points earned by you are lost and the capture bar progress is reduced accordingly. Which means you can get into the cap circle, start the capture count. That does not prevent anybody else from going ahead and going after the enemy. And if it looks like you've got a good handle on things, go ahead and leave the cap, reset it, in order to make sure that your team wins. Now, the other thing that you have to worry about the no cap is if the enemy gets into your cap and starts capping, and you can't get somebody back to reset, or nobody wants to go back to reset because it's a low health enemy and they don't want to, they're after the most damage they can do, the only thing you can do is counter cap, meaning you've got to run up your cap counter. And the only way to do that if the other person has gotten in there is you have to get multiple tanks in your cap circle. If they're capturing at one capture point a second and they've got 20% of their capture done, you're going to need 2 tanks in there just to match them. If they've got 60% of the cap done, you're going to need 3 tanks to match them. So, that's the big question that you have to think about. Now, my usual rule of thumb, again, is if you've got a damaged or slow tank that is able to make it into the cap circle, put them in the cap circle. That puts pressure on the enemy. The enemy now has a very important goal that they have to either deny you or that they have to achieve themselves, and that's going to affect their play style. And the other use of that slow tank is as bait, meaning somebody is going to have to come back and do a reset. And if you want to put some tank destroyers or some stealthy light tanks in a position where they can ambush somebody who's coming back for the reset, that allows you to draw the enemy in. If there's only a couple of them and you've got a numbers advantage, you force them to come to you instead of you chasing all over the map at them. Again, that's just my rule of thumb. There are some people who will never cap, and I've lost games because they'll go chasing after the last 5 hit points that the enemy has in a heavy against an ELC or some other fast light tank, and you never catch them. I've also lost games because people will rush to the cap and try and cap out while the bulk of the enemy team then shoots them to pieces in that wide open cap circle. So it's really a question of situational awareness, relative strength of your team and the enemy team, and the other question is that a lot of people will ask is how much total damage can you inflict on the other team to get more points? It's an important question. There's no one right answer, but knowing the methods and why people think the way they do about it will help you in the game. Now, you can check out a lot of this in the Wargaming Wiki. This is under Battle Mechanics. It explains how you get experience and credits. And I hope this has been useful. It also points out that if the enemy gets into your cap and starts capping, somebody needs to go back and reset, or you need to start counter capping. One of the two, or you're going to lose. And so I hope this has been educational and informational, and I'll see you on the battlefield.